All right, everybody, today we are on the first section of Chapter 7. It's all about systems of equations. We're going to be using substitution, elimination, and graphing. Hopefully all of that sounds a little familiar to you. Clearly we're not going to cover everything in the very first section, but hey, let's get started with graphing and substitution today. Nothing too tragic. Now, little review, basically these are some Algebra 1 level problems just to kind of get us thinking about how to do elimination substitution. Elimination, this is a nice elimination problem. Negative 4y plus 4y will cancel each other out. So we're adding these equations together. It's 3x plus 2x, y's are gone, 7 plus 3, and of course you can solve that in your head, x is 2. Then we are going to do what we call back substitute. We're going to go back to the problem, pick either equation, the top or bottom. I'm going to do the bottom one, and I'm going to substitute or replace x with a 2. And we're just going to go through and solve this equation. 2 times 2, of course, 4. I'm going to subtract the front 4 off, so I'm going to be at negative 1 on the right. And then I'm just dividing by 4. So you will see, of course, one of the differences between Algebra 1 and trig, obviously, is a lot of fraction answers. And we want the ordered pairs written down for our answers, x and then, of course, y. Nothing too tragic there. All right, this is a great substitution problem. I say that because you already have y solved for in the top equation. So I'm just going to substitute that into the bottom equation. So I'm going to rewrite that bottom equation, x minus, and I'm replacing y with negative x plus 4. Now, we are subtracting that entire red expression, so I'm going to put parentheses around it just to remind myself that I'm subtracting the whole thing. I don't want to miss a sign somewhere. So here we go, minus a negative plus minus 4. That's the sign, it's easy to miss. 1x plus 2, another x, let's make it 2x. And most of you can probably solve it from here. Add the 4 over, divide by 2. All right, same thing, we're going to back substitute so we can get our y coordinate. Now, little pro tip, I would put it in this top equation that we used our original substitution because you can pretty much do it in your head. If you replace that x with a 3, we have negative 3 plus 4 because you had that negative sign on the you can do that all right, just a little quick review, substitution, elimination. Now, today we're going to be focusing on substitution. So just like that second warm-up problem, we're going to solve one of the equations for one variable. It might already have that done, it might not. We're going to substitute that into the other equation. We're going to solve it. Then number 4, we're going to find the other variable's answer using substitution. And as always, I am sure you will be checking your answers. All right, determine whether each ordered pair is a solution. So you're basically just plugging these in. I'm going to put 2 in for x, negative 13 for y, and it has to work in both equations. So I'm checking it. I'm top equation 4 times x squared plus y. Let's see if that equals 3. So order of operations, exponent first, 2 squared 4, 4 times 4, 16. 16 minus 13, that does check out, that is 3. I'm now going to check it in the bottom one. If it didn't work in this one, I would just say no and move on. But we have to make sure it works in both. So I'm going to replace the x with a 2, the y with a negative 13. Let's check this. That's going to be a plus, negative 2 plus 3, yep, 11. That does check. It is an ordered pair. So I'm just going to put a final answer of yes. Okay, B, same thing. I'm going to replace the x with negative 2, y with negative 9. So I'm going to put negative 2 in parentheses just to remind myself to square the negative. Let's see if that totals out to 3. So order of operations, exponent first, negative 2 squared, 4, times 4, 16. 16 plus negative 9 does not equal 3. So it is not a solution. I do not even have to bother checking the next problem. All right, if you were in class, in person with me, I would have you try these in person. So set them up, take a minute to try them. You're going to first replace x with 0, y with negative 3, see if that works in the system, and then of course go through the remaining points. I'm going to do the first one with you, then I'll give you some time to try the next ones. So let's put it in the first system. 4 times x minus y, let's see if that equals 1. 4 times 0 is 0. Well, 0 plus 3 is not 1, so I'm going to stop checking. We could just say no and go to the next problem. So I'm going to hit pause for a minute and let you do B, C, and D. Plug those in. All right, so hopefully you've worked your way at least through B and C. Again, same spiel. We're going to put negative 1 in for x. And then I'm going to try negative 5 for y. Let's see if that equals 1. So we have -4 plus 5. That equals 1. That looks like a win. But of course, it has to work in the bottom equation too. So 6 times -1 plus y. Let's see if that equals -6. Ooh, -6 minus 5. It's not going to work in that one, so a big fat no. Has to work in both. And I'm sure, obviously, you can do a lot of the calculations in your calculator. Hopefully, you got a no for C and a yes for D. Nothing too shabby there. And again, I don't need to see the work. You can just use your calculator and check those. Let's get into the good stuff. Let's use some substitution. Now, remember, first step is substitution. Solve one of the equations for one of the variables. Doesn't matter which equation, which variable, pick. I'm going to use the bottom equation, put a little star by it so you know. I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to add y to each side. And again, most of you can probably just do that right in your head. I don't care if you put 2 plus y plus 2, doesn't matter. I'm going to take this expression for x and now substitute it into the top equation. So I'm rewriting that top equation. Instead of x, I'm replacing it with y plus 2, aka substitution, replacing. I still have plus y and equals 4. Now I just go through and solve this equation. I'm going to combine my like terms, 1y plus another y. We're going to subtract 2 off. So y equals 1. Now you're going to, quote unquote, back substitute, replace y with 1 in any equation. I can pretty much do it in my head in this bottom green one. If I put a 1 in there for y, 1 plus 2, 3. I'm just going to make it look nice. Write my final answer as an ordered pair. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Now, as always, we have a lot of fractions. You will definitely see there are a lot more fractions in this book. Now, if you don't like the fractions, look at your denominators. You have a 2 and a 4. The least common multiple, there's a fancy middle school math phrase, that 2 and 4 divide evenly into 4. So I'm going to multiply both equations by 4 to clear the fractions if you do not like them. So 4 times the half, 2, 4 times 3/4, and 4 times 10. Same on the bottom, 4 times 3/4, 4, 16. So that is one way to go about it if you don't like the fractions. I just want to show you that. Now, personally, I'm just going to erase this times 4 in the red. I don't mind the fractions, as you know. I'm going to, of course, I'm zeroed into this bottom equation because I was like, ooh, I could easily solve this for y. I'm going to add y over and subtract 4. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3/4 x, and then I'm going to have minus 4 equals y. Okay, from there, I'm going to take this expression for y and substitute it into the top equation. Because again, I'm not so worried about the fractions, I'm going to roll with them. And I just know this is a fraction-heavy problem. We're going to have fractions regardless. So I'm rewriting that top equation, 1/2 x plus 3/4, but I'm replacing y with 3/4 x minus 4, and then I still have a course that equals 10. So I'm just going to go through and distribute and now work with the fractions. So I've got my 1/2 x, 3/4 times 3/4, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, and then 3/4 times 4. Okay, we're going to combine the 1/2 x and the 9/16x. So you're going to need a common denominator on the 1/2 and the 9/16. Or, of course, you could do that in your calculator if you really needed to. I'm just going to convert 1/2 into 16ths. I know it's 8/16. So I have 8/16 plus 9/16, 17/16. And let's go ahead and add the 3 over. All right, to get rid of that 17/16, we're going to, quote unquote, multiply by the reciprocal, because we're going to end up really dividing, multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to go right to the reciprocal. And final answer, it's a very lovely fraction, everybody. Not surprising. 13 times 16, I did use the calculator for that, and of course over 17. So there's my answer for x. Now I'm going to back substitute that in and figure out y. Now I'm going to put it in this equation, this green one that I isolated y for. I'm going to replace x with a 208 over 17. Okay. Transparency, I did type that in my calculator, what's written in red. I didn't want to go through and do all the fraction work. I let my calculator do the work for me, 88 over 17. Okay, so my final answer, I'm just going to write it out ordered pair style so it looks nice. So again, you could have worked on those top red equations where I cleared the fractions and everything, totally fine. But clearly, I just knew that we're going to have a lot of fractions in this, so it really doesn't matter. You were going to be able to avoid them any way you cut it. All right, let's take a look at these two. So again, if you were in person, you'd be seated with your teams working on these. I'm going to give you a minute to try these. I'm going to set up, of course, the first one with you just to make sure we are under control. So I would, on the first system, I would probably solve that bottom equation for y, because I can just add the x over. So 0 plus x. Now take a second, substitute that in for y. I'm going to give you a minute to finish that off and figure out the answer. All right, so my top equation, let's rewrite it. I replace the y with x. 2x plus 1x, 3x. X, do it in your head, 2. And of course, x and y are the same. That's our red equation. If you put a 2 in there, y is also 2. So 2 comma 2. All right, number 2, same thing. I would pick one equation, doesn't matter which, solve for x or y. I'd probably pick one of the y's. Those seem a little bit easier. I'm going to take the top one and I would add y over. So we've got 2x plus 2 equals y. So now I would substitute this in to this bottom equation for y. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute. You do that, see what you come up with. You will have a fraction in this answer. All right, so our bottom equation, we should be looking like 4x plus y. I'm replacing the y, of course, with the 2x plus 2. We still have minus 5, and then equals 0. Add up your like terms, 4x plus 2x, 2 minus 5. Most you can just solve that in your head. Add 3, divide off 6. We're going to end up with a half. Got it. And then really you could replace probably a half in here for x and get y in your head, because 2 times a half, 1, 1 plus 2, 3. So my final answer, of course, 1/2 for x, and you should have gotten 3 for y. All right, let's take a look, a little bit more substitution. It is more of the same process, but notice they got fancy here, and now you have an x squared, a quadratic equation. So process is the same. Solve one of the equations for x or y, substitute it into the other equation. My big piece of advice, do not work on the quadratic equation. Start with the linear. So do not start with the squared, start with the bottom one. So quick and easy, I'm just going to add x over. So I'm going to rewrite that x minus 1. So I'm going to replace the top equation, I'm going to replace the y with x minus 1. So I'm going to rewrite this top equation. I've got my x squared, my minus x, minus y. Now y, my expression's a binomial. I'm going to put it in parentheses so I make sure I subtract everything. We don't want to miss a sign. And now let's take a look. Let's distribute, see what we have. So I'm going to run this negative through. So minus x, let's combine it. And of course, if I subtract 1 from each side, they're going to cancel each other out. Now, we've got our quadratic. Easiest way to solve a quadratic, my friends, factoring. So first type of factoring we learned, greatest common factor. They each have an x. I'm going to factor an x out. So I'm going to have 0 for my first answer, 2 for the second. So you're going to have 2 ordered pairs for your answers. One with an x of 0, one with an x of 2. Now, let's calculate the corresponding y's. If I replace, let's start over here with 0. So if I do 0 minus 1, got it. And then I'm going to replace the x with 2. 2 minus 1, got it. So you can have more than one ordered pair. So I just think about the graph of this. That top equation, of course, would be a parabola. The bottom, a line. A line is intersecting or hitting that parabola in 2 different spots. Hence why we have 2 different answers. All right, let's take a look at this system. Again, same words of wisdom. Do not start with the squared, the quadratic. So I would start with the top equation. Super easy. I'm just going to add this x over to get y alone. Kind of sneaking it in there. Now I'm going to substitute that expression into the bottom equation and replace that for y. So my bottom equation, I've got x squared plus, I'm replacing y, or substituting in for y, x plus 4, and then I still have equals 3. All right, let's see what we've got here. So quadratic, let's set it to 0. So I'm going to subtract the 3. I'm going to pray it factors. 4 minus 3, 1. There are not two numbers that multiply to 1 and add to the middle 1, unfortunately. So choices. You could use quadratic formula or completing the square. I don't care what you use, you'll get the same answer. I'm going to go quadratic formula just because completing the square, we have a lot of fractions, half of b. So quadratic formula, x equals the opposite of b, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Now I'm a little worried about the square root expression. 1 squared, 1, 4 times 1 times 1. I'm going to have negative 3 under there. We cannot square root a negative number. It kicks us into the imaginary unit system. We did all of this work for a final answer of no solution. Doesn't that just make you feel good? All right, one more of these, my friends. So it's a little substitution. Same thing, but I don't know why these always kind of mess kids with their heads a little bit when you're both set equal to y. You were ready to substitute. The lefts are the same, the rights are the same. So it's like I'm replacing this y with a negative x squared. Same thing, I'm going to set it to 0. We're going to hope it factors. We don't have to use quadratic formula again. I'm going to add x squared over. 1x squared plus another x squared. And then I'm going to factor that GCF of 2x out. All right, so I'm going to set my first factor, the 2x, to 0. We can solve that in our head. And then I set x minus 2 to 0. Clearly, you can solve that in your head, too. Just writing out all the work for you. So we're going to have two ordered pairs again. One with an x coordinate of 0, one with an x coordinate of 2. Now, it doesn't matter which equation you plug these into to get your corresponding answers. If you put 0 in this guy, 0 squared, 4 times 0, 0 minus 0, 0. Then I'm going to put positive 2 in. So I'm going to do 2 squared minus 4 times 2. 2 squared, 4. I've got 4 minus 8. You will get the same answer if you replaced them in the top equation. Doesn't matter. All right, couple problems for you to try on your own. See if you can get those. Again, I'm going to wait for a couple minutes for you to try them, and then I will go through them. But you are trying these first. Clearly, if you're in class, I'd be having you work on them. So just to get you started on the top one, the first equation, the first system, I start on the top equation. I would just add the y over. So we've got x equals y minus 4. And then we're going to substitute that into this bottom equation. Now we have to square that, which means you would have to write it out twice and do the full FOIL on it. I'm just going to FOIL it quick. Minus 8y would be the middle. Same deal, I'm going to set it equal to 0, and we're going to combine any like terms. So I'm going to have minus 8 minus 1, let's combine it minus 9. That's what I meant to write, there we go. And then I have 16 plus 2. Factor it out. Multiply to 18, add to negative 9, negative 6, negative 3. So my answers for y are 6 and 3. So my ordered pairs, I'm putting those in the y coordinate. Make sure you put them in y, not x. Okay, plug those in. You can almost, like I said, mentally do the second coordinate. Let's start with 6. If I put 6 in here for y, 6 minus 4 gives me 2 for x. And then if I put 3 in there for y, 3 minus 4, negative 1. Got it. All right, final problem of the day. Again, I would, hopefully, you started with the bottom equation, the non-quadratic, the linear. I would just add y over. Pretty much do that in your head. I don't care if you put it 2 plus y plus 2. And I'm going to substitute that into the top equation. So, top equation, we've got our 2. We're replacing x with y plus 2. We're going to have to square that. So, 2 first. I'm going to give you a second to FOIL that out. Maybe you can do it in your head. Maybe you have to write it down twice and do the full FOIL on it. Totally up to you. I'm going to FOIL it, y squared, 4y, and 4. Now I'm going to distribute the 2 through it. It's like every algebra skill in one. We're going to set it to 0, and we're going to combine any like terms. So I'm going to have 2y squared, 8y minus y, 7y, 8 minus 1, 7. So first I'm going to try factoring. I'm going to multiply the outside two numbers, 14, Multiply to 14, add to 7, there isn't anything. Factoring, out. Doesn't mean we can't do it. We gotta probably try maybe quadratic formula. Y equals opposite of b, plus or minus, square root b squared. I'm just gonna go ahead and square 749 minus 4 times a times c. Now wait a minute. I'm gonna end up, I know it's all over 2a, but I'm looking at the square root. I'm gonna have 49 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 7. That's going to be a negative. Can't square root a negative. I just did all that work for a lousy no solution. Isn't that great? God, I love math. All right, make sure you show all of your work, of course, on your homework packet. Have a great day.